Hey everyone, it's your girl Maddie here, aka Beaver Mosh, and today I am joined by Aki and James of New House Studios. Aki, James, how are we doing this evening? Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Wonderful. We are we are so great.
We're doing so
We're
great.
amazing. We're so
Yeah.
good and normal.
Oh yeah.
Before we started recording, James was showing me you were showing me your hummus, your pita chips, and
Yes.
I kind of want some now. Um,
I think I had like a chana masala or something for dinner too, so I guess big fan of chickpeas over here.
yeah, no, Indian
Yes.
food. You can never go wrong with. Do you
Yeah.
go what spice level do you go with?
I'm kind of a coward lately, so I've been doing for Indian food I do like mild. If I know that I will like have like I'll like be at home for the next 24 hours, maybe I'll do a medium. But and when I get a medium, I'm like, oh, it's pretty spicy. Um, so
Yeah, medium's about as much as I can handle.
yeah.
I'm the opposite. I'm a heat freak. I'm like the waitress is like, "Are you sure?" I'm like, Yes, I want more than what gives you
Yeah.
that reaction. I want
I
spicier than
respect
that."
that.
Yeah. Um. Well, let's start off with a basic question. What is Newhouse?
First and foremost, it is a studio. It
Oh
is
yeah.
a studio that does recording and mixing and mastering and some other stuff. But really, it's a lot more than that. And really, it's not like the other studios. Um, I mean, basically, I started my transition right around the time that the studio started taking off, and I started being a more active part of the trans community online. And so the combination of that has meant that the studio is both um, very trans and very online. Um, so those have been some key components in that a lot of the clients, a vast majority of the clients we work with are trans or queer.
Mhm.
And we do have an on-site recording um, for musicians who wanted to travel or are local to Massachusetts where we're based. But we also do a lot of our work online because there's very talented trans artists across the whole world. And so a lot of our work has been based around that. And also, in addition to all that, we do Twitch streaming. We've released a few compilations, and we do fundraisers for the Trans Musician Fund, which I can probably get into a little more later.
Definitely will.
So it's more than just a recording studio. It has
Mm.
all these kind of programs that go with it.
Now you said that it is not like other studios. Is it mainly do you mainly mean that as in the focus, the mission behind the studio?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah.
And I think just the how we run it, how we operate, who we work with. I think it's all just a little bit different than what I've usually and I don't think I think our path to get here was a lot more less typical or a lot less typical than a lot of studios.
Mhm. Well, let's get into that. When and why did you start Newhouse, and how exactly did you kind of get it off its feet and kind of established?
Yeah, so we Aki and I have known each other for God, going on like 15 years now, I think. Both of us grew up in Southern California. We met
Hmm.
at music camp. We started doing music together, had some bands together. And once we got into college, Aki went over to the East Coast. I stayed on the West Coast. We continued doing music back and forth for the next, I don't know, like 9 or so years. And then in 2019, I reached a point in California where I was burnt out at my job. I didn't really have any family anymore. They had all moved out of state. I didn't really have a social network anymore after the band that I was a part of ended things. Um, and we got to talking, and Aki was just like, "Hey, why don't you just move out here and we can do studio stuff in Boston?" And I was like, "Well, it can't be that expensive." Um, and it really wasn't too horrible. It took a few months to save up, being very frugal. And I quit my job, moved out here in July of 2019, which was great timing for the world to totally not end like 6 months later. Um, but by that point, we had kind of set up this little house we had rented into kind of a makeshift little recording space that
Mhm.
we were really just primarily trying to do our own music with. It was a unfinished basement. The mixing room was just kind of in the dining room. It wasn't really treated or anything like that. Um, and at the time, um, I was working at Guitar Center, so I was able to get some good discounts on gear. So we were kind of buying up stuff. And then COVID happened. And obviously, it was a horrific experience for the whole world and still continues to be. But the one small silver lining of it was the government assistance pay and the fact that I was not fired from Guitar Center. I was simply furloughed. So I was
Mhm.
still able to use my discount along with all of our COVID money. We were able to start building out gear, and I think that was around the point when you started transitioning, right? Around then,
Yeah, it was 2020.
yeah.
So yeah, that was all kind of around the same time of yeah, starting to get more involved with the trans community also, and starting to just kind of being like, hey, we have a studio, and we've been basically self-recording and mixing our own music with primarily with a constant knowledge of death.
Mhm.
Um, and that was kind of a good showcase for the studio, just to be like, hey, we did this. We can do things, work with us. And it started to kind of go from
Snowballed.
there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it snowballed a little bit from there, and then the more we started talking about the studio, we really started trying to figure out like what do we actually want to do with the studio.
Mhm.
Like we didn't really want it to be just another recording studio, even if it was, semi-unique in being trans-owned and operated. There are not very many of those to begin with, but we also wanted to push it further and say like, what can we actually do to benefit the trans and queer community beyond just being a space that is more comfortable for that community based
Mhm.
on the leadership and ownership. And that's where we started really digging into like, okay, what are some programs we can start implementing? It's where we got the Trans Musician Fund. It's where we started getting into the compilations, the fundraising, the more um, I want to say like severe, but more pointed online presence. And
Severe.
yeah, not severe is the wrong word. I'm very tired. But yeah, there's a more focused online presence
Yeah.
and mission than just being another recording studio. Um, and since then, it's just kind of built and kept going, and it's been going pretty strong since we formed, in 2019. And we're just hoping to continue building on our successes and keep, you know, doing the best we can for the communities.
And I'm curious, how much of an undertaking is it to start a studio from scratch? You know, setting up the treatment of the walls, getting the computer set up, putting all the instruments in place. I mean, getting the mixing boards all configured.
um, yeah,
Significant.
many. It
Yeah.
is many. Especially when you do it multiple times. But
Yeah.
it's also kind of builds on itself. So like when we were in the original new house, we basically had like all the kind of like basic foam treatment, and that was all just stuff we like compiled together between that we already had. And there was a lot of it, so it looked pretty professional, but it wasn't really like high grade at all. So this time when we moved, we just dropped like $1,000 on all
Yeah.
this foam around us. So we kind of incrementally upgraded from like the pretty basic foam to the more professional grade soundproofing. And I think it took like a couple months to really get this
Mhm.
room into the shape it was in now. I mean, I set up the
if not
desk.
longer.
Yeah, set up the desk and like monitors pretty quickly, but it wasn't fully like treated until then. And then it was like, oh god, this is so much easier to mix. Uh, and then yeah, there's also like the live room. Um, we have like blankets, acoustic blankets and stuff in there. So that was a whole process too. That was a kind of really pain in the dick. So and there's also just kind of like maintenance, like keeping the space clean, or things fall down, reorganizing, getting more stuff and having to figure out where it goes. Um,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
it's a big process at the start, and it's a ongoing process constantly.
Yeah, the long and short of it is it's a lot of time, experience, education, and capital over
Mhm.
well over a decade of just slowly building up, buying what we can when we can, reinvesting our profits into just better gear to just keep us going, keep us building. Um, and again, like kind of going back a little bit on the Trans Musician Fund, like the capital side of things is why we started that because especially within the trans and queer community, like those communities just don't have the same resources that cis white people do in the music industry,
Mhm.
and we want to do what we can to try to offset that imbalance with that crowdfunded
Yep.
initiative.
Yeah, one statistic I cite a lot is that trans women make about 60 cents on the dollar for every cis man. And as somebody who is some people who are working with trans artists, you kind of like we see how that manifests all the time um, between people who were able to pay, and all of a sudden it's like, well, I got fired from my job all of a sudden for some reason. Um, who knows why? Uh,
Yeah.
it's because
No
most
idea
bosses
why
are
it could
transphobic.
possibly be.
Yeah. The like people who were able to afford to work on things slipping into financial insecurity. And it's very disheartening to watch that happen over and over and over again. And it seems
Yeah,
like
that's
everybody I know that I've been working with is struggling more than they were a
Mhm.
couple years ago, even. Like it seems like it's always getting worse. And every time it gets worse, we get a little bit more filled with spite and figuring our shit out with this and trying to raise more money. To like, ideally, the goal would be that um, trans artists are able to work with us in in a manner that's completely crowdfunded, because that 60 cents on the dollar means that such a huge percentage of trans people are um, working paycheck to paycheck, which means that working on music, paying to get your music mixed and mastered is a luxury. It's not an essential like food or something. I mean, it's a human essential for us as a culture to have arts in our lives, but
Mhm.
it's not an immediate survival need. And so ideally, um, we would be able to crowdfund every trans artist to work with us 100%, because
Their voices are the ones that need to be heard over everyone
mhm,
else's.
their voices are the ones that need to be heard, and cis people need to be putting their money where their mouth is at. Um,
Fuck
if
yeah.
they're an ally, they should be. That is a way to elevate trans voices, is
Mm.
by supporting um, the artistry of trans musicians or other trans artists, because any form of art is expensive. And the studio is one way that trans artists can be supported with the cost of making their art, with the production and mixing costs.
Yeah. Well, your studio, and I think this is kind of the reason why you are talking to people like me right now, is that you just put out a new compilation, Trans Right 2, We Are No Longer Asking, and I was hoping that
Yeah,
you
it's
could.
coming out on July 12th.
Cool.
We have a pre-order up, and we did like a little preview of it, but
Yeah.
it's officially dropping next week on the 12th.
Okay, so it's pre-ordered now. But can you tell me a little bit about this compilation and what it's for and who's involved with it?
Yeah, so the idea of doing a compilation for this kind of originated when we started the Trans Musician Fund.
Mhm.
We kind of wanted to make it like an event too, that we're introducing this thing, give people a reason to donate. We do have a coffee account, which is kind of just an open way to donate at any time.
Mhm.
But we also wanted to kind of like offer something in return to get people to donate. So we made a band camp. This is the beginning of 2022. We made a band camp, put some shirts up, and we're like, oh, we should put what's a band camp? We need music too. So we asked a bunch of artists that we'd work with over like the last year or so if we could feature mostly released music on there. Um, and that became the first compilation that we did. Um, the year after was like we decided that we wanted to kind of make it more of an interesting showcase.
Mhm.
And we called for all original songs from artists. Again, a lot of them were artists that we'd been working with, or artists that we'd wanted to work with, and mostly trans artists. And so we felt like that was really a success in terms of both the fundraising and kind of just like the collaborative community effort of it all. Like me and James did like a lot of recording and mixing and like guest features on it. There was projects that were kind of just one-offs for the compilation, and again, kind of bringing groups of people together to work on stuff, which was really cool.
And
Yeah.
then we repeated it this year. So this year we sourced more songs from primarily trans artists, put together another compilation, released another new shirt design. And this round we decided that while the Trans Musician Fund is extremely important, there is um, we wanted to have a focus on the particular plight of the Palestinians
Yeah.
right now in Gaza, because at the exact moment, what's happening over there is horrific, and there needs to be direct assistance to them
Mhm.
first and foremost. So we are uh, donating the primary donation for the compilation, which is set at $10 or more. The first $10 goes to Doctors Without Borders
Oh yeah.
to assist there. Any optional donation over that, so if you donate 15, 10 goes to Doctors Without Borders. The additional 5 goes to our Trans Musician Fund.
Mhm.
So that's the way that we decided to, give a heightened focus to the plight in Gaza while simultaneously still supporting the Trans Musician Fund. Um, all the general donations from coffee, the old merchandise sales, the amount that we get from subscriptions, or a portion of the amount we get from subscriptions on Twitch, Bits Cheered, etc. That all goes into the Trans Musician Fund.
Mhm.
But this particular comp, we wanted to support Doctors Without Borders. We have an absolute stacked lineup of really cool artists. You got the list, right?
Yeah.
So we had Sylvia Haynes, who we've worked with a bunch. The Holy Ghost Tabernacle Choir contributed a ridiculously good cover of Psycho Killer.
Oh yeah.
We had my good friend Daniel put out a song on this, who I was in a band with many years ago. We still work with constantly. You did Aki did a cover, a low cover, to uh, basically close it out. We also have a very fun dungeon synth track that
Hell
is
yeah.
it's essentially a cod with some switches and a different bassist. I don't play bass on this. I did guitar and vocals. Our good friend Mara played bass, and it's Ari from ACOD and Aki. And it is a Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind themed death metal side project. So we have the first song. It goes back and forth between being dungeon synth and just straight up death metal. We have a dungeon synth track on the compilation. That'll be the
Mhm.
first thing that comes out for this project with full length on the horizon.
I have I always associate dungeon synth with black metal, but I've never heard it combined with death metal, so I'm so curious.
It's like we were just kind of writing riffs. So there's like there's a lot of death metal, there's a lot of thrash, there's a lot of black metal in it.
There's some new metal.
There's some new metal, there's
Oh.
some like like black gaze kind of moments. Like we kind of just did whatever, and then Mara is like a huge Elder Scrolls Morrowind nerd, and she wrote a bunch of like amazing, very lore accurate lyrics. And I don't even know half of what the fuck I'm talking about on the record, but I screamed my little heart out on it. I'm
Hell
pretty
yeah.
proud of it. So it'll come out in a couple months, hopefully.
Well, you keep mentioning this Trans Musicians Fund, and I want to know more. You know, how do people, donate to this? Recording can be quite expensive for artists who don't have the capital to record, and as you mentioned, especially, trans artists,
Yeah.
but want to make music. They can they access your studio through this fund? Tell me more about it.
Yeah, so pretty much any trans artist that is working with us is free to ask more about the fund. We try to give it as much visibility as we can on our website, which actually the part of the reason we did the compilation when we did was to kind of unveil our new logo and website. And the website more prominently features the Trans Musician Fund and the work we do for that,
Mhm.
and the artists that we've worked with. And so we're hoping that we're talking about it enough that any musician who reaches out to us is aware of it, and is asking about it. And usually it's kind of based on how much money we have available, um, because we don't want to like spend all the money that we have available on one artist at once.
Yeah.
So usually we're able to do like 20 to 30% of a project for like a bigger project, possibly more for like a smaller project. At times we've offered 100% coverage for things like,
Like a single.
yeah, single or a shorter master, something like that. Um, and we're hoping that as it grows, we're able to offer more and more. And yeah, right now is a good time for artists to reach out to us since we are actively in the process of releasing this compilation.
Yeah.
So there's a few ways that we've been able to, like, we've kind of gradually added means of fundraising for it.
Mhm.
So originally when we started, there was the coffee site, and I'll send you a couple links that you can like throw in the video. So there's a coffee site, which is a site where it's a basic donation that just goes straight to us. I don't get anything in return. It's just I want to donate, and people can do that at any time. Then there's also the Bandcamp, which has our all of our releases, all of the compilations, and all the money from that goes to the Trans Musician Fund,
Mhm.
with the exception of the new one where the $10 per purchase goes to Doctors Without Borders, and then our merchandise where any profits, so after the cost of the shirts, or after the cost of the shirts and shipping, everything goes to the Trans Musician Fund as well. And then in the past couple of years, we've done a few other things where we've brought shirts to sell to real life events sometimes, including New Friends Fest in 2022, which is a mostly screamo fest in Toronto around July, August, the last couple years. Gonna be back there in a few weeks to do some recording, and also we will be selling more shirts. One either Saturday or Sunday of the fest, and we'll have kind of a setup where people can donate. We're also supporting the fest with recording, mixing, and mastering. We did that last year as well. We mixed and mastered all the sets. And so it's an opportunity for us to continue fundraising for that.
No.
Additionally, we have Twitch. It's hard for me to consistently find time to stream, but we want it to be both an educational service for people, basically to watch streams or whatever. Sometimes it's just me playing guitar, but a portion of the money we make through Twitch goes to the fund as well. I thought there was one other thing. Oh yeah. Currently, we're working with
Yeah, and the new metal
yeah,
agenda.
new metal agenda.
Yeah, crazy ass moments in new metal history on all the fun things. Kirk is a super cool dude. He is
The
doing
Twitter
a-
account?
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's on Twitter. I think he's on Instagram. He's got a website too.
Yeah.
He's currently doing a Pride collection.
Oh,
that has
wow.
been extended until July 11th, I believe. It was running all through Pride Month as well. And a portion of the purchases from that go to us as well. The
Amazing.
merch collection's absolutely stacked. He's got shirts, hoodies, tank tops, with like 4 or 5 different designs. One of them is a super sick Sonic and Shadow the Hedgehog Sonic Adventure Battle 2 rip off, where Sonic is dressed like Fred Durst and Shadow is dressed like Jonathan Davis, from Limp Bizkit and Korn, respectively. For those who aren't new metal connoisseurs. But he also has a bunch of just like standard, Pride stuff. His logo with Pride stuff. He did like a NWO, wrestling knockoff logo that's NMO, New Metal Agenda, or NMA, New Metal Agenda shirt. And yeah, that also will support the Trans Musician Fund.
Amazing.
Yeah. Also wanted to just double down disclaimer, because the Trans Musician Fund is crowdfunded, so the amount that we have is never explicit at or constant at any given moment. So we highly encourage trans musicians to reach out about the fund if they are in need of financial assistance to work with us. We just can't guarantee any specific amount that we're able to provide.
Yeah.
However, the fund is specifically designed to offset the cost for them to work with us, not just to give us more money. Like if we have a project, say you've got a record of all cis white dudes and it's going to cost $1,000, cool, it's $1,000. If you have a record that's all trans musicians who have the exact same record length, exact same style, exact same music, and they reach out to us about the project, we're not going to charge them more and then offset that with the Trans Musician Fund. It's going to cost the exact same amount. It's just we can use that fund to still pay us the same amount that we would make anyways, because we still got to pay our bills. We still got to keep the lights on. We still got to reinvest, get new gear, all that fun stuff. Like, Hockey's a trans musician too. Got to support her.
So yeah, then that would end up being like, say, $700 instead.
Exactly. Yeah, we would be able to contribute, say we have $300 that we're able to contribute from the Trans Musician Fund. The artist would only be paying $7 out of pocket. That other 300 would be offset from the fund.
Now, I was looking at your website a little bit and kind of the services you provide, and I was hoping you can go into more detail, but it seems like you provide mixing and mastering and recording. You even provide your services as studio musicians as needed. Am I missing anything?
That's like the bulk of it. Yeah, we can do like consultations and stuff too sometimes. Like again, like Aki mentioned about Twitch being like a very educational kind of thing. We don't want to gatekeep being able to do music yourself. Like the ideal is that like we can help you out and get you a great product, but in the long run, like we want to empower musicians to be able to do stuff on their own.
Mhm.
So if you are an artist who's like, hey, can you hop online with me for like 2 hours and let's go over like what gear do I need? Here's my budget. What would you recommend? We can provide, gear recommendations, acoustic treatment recommendations, kind of look over, without getting into uh, any more detail than the artist wants to, things about the household, how you can help out, like what room you should be in, how to soundproof if you're trying to do that, how to acoustically treat if you're trying to do that, what good plugins are, what's the most cost efficient and effective way we can help you get to the degree that you want to get to with your own setup, whether
Yeah.
that's I just want a great guitar to learn how to play music better, or I want to start my own studio. Like we're here to help with that. It is definitely not something we do a lot. It is very much like a once in a while kind of thing, but we are available to help out with that.
Yeah.
And yeah. So I'd say the bulk of it, the things we do, mixing, mastering, recording, and then yeah, we do a fair amount of session work as musicians too. A lot of times people might just hit me up to do like a feature on guitar or vocals. So that's always fun, and it's like it's cool because I just have to record myself. I don't have to go to a studio to do that. Um, a lot of times on tracks, people might not have a live drummer. James plays drums.
Mhm.
Um,
Especially since drum recording is extremely difficult. In general, it requires, a lot more space than people typically have with a lot
Mhm.
more mics and things like that.
mm.
So we're able to offer that and specialized instruments as well. Aki plays violin. That's always a
Yeah, I've
fun
done a
one.
few violin features. I was
You've done a
actually
lot of
like,
violin
I
features
was like, oh yeah, I've
lately.
actually done quite a few at this point. And sometimes like it's kind of cool because the kind of the line between a mix engineer and being a producer or even a composer and arranger is kind of blurred with these albums, especially when a musician gives you like a green light to kind of like do what you think feels right. And especially with Daniel, who we mentioned, working on another one of his albums. Um, and he definitely gives us a green light to be like to messed with our arrangement. We did a lot of recording on that album. James did drums. I did some guitar. James,
Auxiliary
yeah, a
percussion,
lot of
automaton.
percussion. That's always
Fun.
fun. I actually just did some violin for it today. And I'm kind of in the last stage of working on the album where I'm kind of working on the like track transitions and adding little bits to make it all flow together. Um, so it's kind of like how much a musician is open to us adding bits to it.
And there's a
Yeah.
level of trust that comes with that. And Daniel's somebody that we've collaborated with for over a decade at this point. So like we have like a really good relationship with him, and that level of trust that he allows us to kind of flex our creative brains and try to figure out how to add that extra little spice that the record
Mhm.
needs. But that's really what we try to achieve with everybody that we work with. Like we want to really focus on the interpersonal relationship between the
Yeah.
artist and the producer. Um, and we really prioritize that even more than like the technical knowledge,
Mhm.
because you can be the most technical competent producer on the planet, but if you're a piece of shit, nobody's going to want to work with you.
Mhm.
We really want to be a studio where people can come in and we can treat them how they want to be treated, work with them in the way they want to work with us, and provide them with the level of comfort that we can suggest these kind of things and kind of build out the record a little bit more than in ways that like maybe they hadn't thought of. Maybe they have ideas and we're like, that's cool, but like what if we did this? And if they're like,
Mhm.
nah, it's like, okay, cool, like let's do it your way, we'll try it, let's go. Like we're not committed to anything by any means. It's your
Mhm.
work, like you're hiring us, right? And we want to make sure that like the product that everybody gets like we want everybody to walk out being like, regardless if it's like a super happy pop record or it's like a really dense cathartic, expression of one's inner being, like we want people to walk out being like, I enjoyed doing this, whether
Mhm.
it was painful or otherwise. Like we want it to be a good experience.
Yeah.
um, and having that level of trust is like super super important to us as producers, because otherwise how are you going to get a good product? Like if people aren't comfortable and they don't trust you, like it's going to come out forced or it's going to come out rushed and shitty, and like that's the last thing we want to do, because we don't, number one, we don't want your product to feel horrible coming out of it. Number two, it looks bad on us.
Hmm.
Yeah, and on the topic of like albums that we like had some sort of production role and kind of like adding session musician stuff. I think when the Victory Over the Sun album, that was a real standout for me in doing that. But I was credited with additional guitars, but I really have to emphasize that it was really just kind of a cherry on top type thing where I didn't want to change the fundamental arrangement and composition of the album at all. And I was basically doing little like atmospheric swells in a couple
Yeah.
places. I was doing feedback in a couple places. And that was really to make the one, make the atmosphere a little more complete, and two, to make some of the existing guitars sound a little more organic with like feedback in certain parts and that sort of thing. So that's like the type of work I really like doing as a producer, where it's like it's such a niche,
Mhm.
and where you're just adding little tiny guitar details and stuff like that that is not fundamentally altering the vision of the musician, or the composition of the musician. It's just kind of completing the final, is kind of tying it all
Yeah.
together and completing it. Uh, and that sort of thing is a really enjoyable part of making an album for me, when artists give me the blessing to do that sort of thing.
Yeah, we don't necessarily want to be the people baking the cake from scratch unless you're
Mhm.
explicitly wanting us to do that. We like being the people that go up to the batter, stick our finger in, and go, needs a little more salt, and then we can add that little bit of salt, and then it's like,
Yeah.
oh, this made the cake like just that extra little bit extra tasty that pushes it over the edge.
Hey, we should put MSG in the cake.
Yeah,
I
that's
don't
what we
know.
that is what we add. Like we
Yeah,
we just sometimes we just dump it
that's kind
in.
of that's kind
Like,
of what guitar feedback is.
yeah, it's just
Just the
MSG.
MSG of music.
Oh yeah.
I love that.
Um, well, Aki, you gave me a perfect segue to something I did want to ask you. And I've been holding off onto this for a while, in case you ever did come on the show. One of my earliest interviews I did on Beaver Mosh was with Victory Over the Sun,
Oh yeah.
and
Nice.
she mentioned you, and she mentioned your roller coaster tycoon
Oh my
obsession,
god.
and I want to know about this.
Hell
Oh, this
yeah.
is my favorite story. Um,
Did you meet
did
her
she?
on a roller coaster tycoon
Yeah.
floor?
So
Okay.
I met her.
This is the
I didn't
craziest
know.
sub community ever.
So I was on the site. It must have been the mid 2000s. I think it was,
Uh-huh.
yeah, it was like the mid, even early 2000s maybe. I was on this site called rct2.com, later RCT Space. I think it still exists. I think it's kind of like an archive now, but it still technically exists. And at one point, I was in this kind of like there was like team or club. I guess it was clubs where it was a group of people who were like got chosen to be in a club and we're supposed to build group parks with each other. That the supposed is doing a lot of heavy lifting because I don't think there was many that were completed, if
Mhm.
any, by this particular club. Um, but we were apparently in that club together. I wasn't aware of this when I met her. Um,
You've never told me that.
oh, I didn't tell you that part.
No.
Yeah. So
That is
so we'd
nuts.
been friend like I'm like starting to get into Twitter. I'm like, oh, who's this cool girl playing guitar? We become friends. We start talking about it. At some point, I talk about Roller Coaster Tycoon. She's like, "Oh yeah, I love that. That's so much fun." And I'm like, "Oh yeah, I was kind of in like 'cause usually when I talk about Roller Coaster Tycoon, people are like, "Oh yeah, I love killing the guests." And I'm like, "No, you don't understand. I do the I'm world building. I'm making a artistic creation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm basically
It's
mixing an
art.
album, but in Roller Coaster Tycoon. Honestly, it's more complex to a degree. So,
Yeah.
I was in. I was talking to her about this, and she was like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I used to do that too. I was into that too." And I was like, "Wait, what sites were you on?" And she like we told each other our usernames, and I'm like, "Oh my god, I totally remember your like that. I knew that username from back then."
Jesus. That is
And it was
so
just like,
random and amazing and
yeah,
incredible. Um, I've I know you can still get it on. I don't think it's on Steam, but there are some places that still you. I think like you can get it on like Humble or something. But
I
you can
think
get
it
roller
is
coaster.
on Steam.
You can,
And on
yeah.
top of that, so you can get the original on Steam. They've also created, there's an open source version of it, completely like user created,
Yeah.
not affiliated with the original game, but basically a team of people reverse engineered the original Roller Coaster Tycoon 2 and kind of built on top of it. With the purpose of kind of uncracking a lot of things and removing limits and kind of growing the game, and kind of bringing into the game a lot of stuff that people were using like third party programs to kind of hack it.
Mhm.
Um, things like removing building clearances, like removing money, just things that allow you to build a more like to build in a more like artistic way.
Yeah,
Yeah.
custom assets, taking
Yeah.
existing assets and using them in different ways. And it's like at the point where you look at like people who do those like crazy like large scale Minecraft things where they're just
Yeah.
like building like crazy, castles or whatever. But like that's what this community does in OpenRCT. They're just making these insane parks using whatever assets
Yeah.
they have, custom assets. And then within this forum that is still like quite active, like competitions are still going. You're like in one currently, I think.
Yeah, we're in first place, motherfucker.
Yeah.
That's
Built this
incredible.
Yeah.
insane like what's that movie, the space movie where they fight bugs, Starship Troopers, is that
Yeah,
it? It's
yeah.
like almost a Starship Trooper style park where it's
Mhm.
like almost like a technocratic like fascist government with giant robots fighting a big war against bugs, and like that is the theme of this park, and it
That's
is
so good.
legitimately one of the craziest things I've ever seen in my life. um as somebody who like played RCT growing up, like I wasn't like the I just want to kill guests. I was like actually playing the campaign and building parks and stuff, but not like this. It is like a whole nother level.
I was
Yeah,
more
there's a
of a
lot of
Sim. I was more of a Sim City kid, but I did play Roller Coaster Tycoon, but I had no idea what I was doing. And I'm like, is there a strategy involved? Obviously, there is. Is there a learning curve? How do you get good at Roller
Oh
Coaster
yeah.
Tycoon?
I mean a lot of like what people traditionally play it is kind of just like beating the like scenarios. So this is more of like a free like almost like building something in like Minecraft, and kind of trying to create something that's visually pleasing and also like functional.
Uh,
Some people recreate existing parks. Some people are just kind of creating like fantasy things that might be based on like loosely based on different like just different movies or video games and stuff like that. And it is a pretty intense learning curve. And a lot of it is kind of just looking at the parks that exist already, um, trying to learn from them, see what the builders are doing, talking to people who build, getting feedback from them. Sometimes, not as much anymore. People are pretty nice now. Back in the day, people were just like fucking assholes. Um, there's like looks like shit, start over.
Yeah.
give up. They're like, this site is for
Get
the
good.
pros. Like, you're not supposed to be here.
Oh, goddamn.
Like that was stuff like that. It's gotten a lot less toxic. There's still definitely drama. There is roller coaster tycoon drama. It gets pretty intense.
It's just like
People,
any other
yeah,
like niche community, especially within the like nerdier side of things, you know, like speed running and stuff like that. Like there's always like toxic assholes
yeah,
everywhere. But like I feel like and this doesn't just go for like open RCT community, but just in general, a lot of those communities have like opened up a lot more because like as
Hmm.
people get older and you know have less time to do stuff, I think everybody started to realize like, wow, if we're not nice to people, we're gonna like have to close, like stop doing
yeah.
this. We need new people. So like I feel like that
Ugh.
a lot of those communities have gotten in general a lot nicer over the years, a lot more open and accepting and welcoming and um, helpful to new users.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
I feel like I could jump into open RCT at any point, but I would just lose my life if I tried to do that. It seems like so much fun.
oh yeah, yeah. It's a good time. I mean, it's kind of it's fun in the way that making an album is fun. In that it's not fun sometimes.
Mhm.
There's busy.
It's fulfilling. There's busy work. There's personal struggles. There's questioning your entire life.
Mhm.
There's all of the
Deadlines.
juicy, yeah, all of the juicy personal growth and like difficult social interactions of collaborating on music together or any type of art really.
But it's
And
Roller
yeah,
Coaster Tycoon.
yep. And yeah, like I think it would have been really hard to exist as an openly trans person in that community like 15 years ago. And like I wouldn't say it's easy now just because like it's not easy anywhere, I think, in any space that is in any space that's not a niche for trans people. We are going to face some degree of transphobia or in transmisogyny, even if it's not intentional or like malicious. It's just there. And that's just the reality. I get it in music. Um, I get it. I get it anywhere I go. That's how it is.
Yeah.
And I guess to bring it full circle, like that's part of why having a trans studio is great.
Yeah.
Have a space where I mean, I'm not going to say that every trans person is free of internalized transphobia and transmisogyny, but we had to work on that in ourselves. And so I'm hoping that
Yeah.
people, the trans people who work with me, are able to feel much more comfortable and respected and heard because of that. Um, yeah, but also yeah, the roller coaster tycoon online community. It's crazy.
I so I am very active in the RuneScape community. Um and I know that what it's like to have like that elitism in the online spaces involving an old game and the transphobia
Oh
that
yeah.
exists on it, but there is more and more people being visibly trans within this community, which I think is great that people feel like they can be part of a thing. And
We're taking over. We're growing our numbers. We're gonna
yes.
trans everybody.
Yeah, and doesn't RuneScape have a bunch of drama between people who play like old RuneScape and new RuneScape and stuff
Yeah,
like
no,
that?
new RuneScape is not a real thing. It's fake. It's no, we don't consider
Yeah,
that is not real
that is my
RuneScape.
understanding as well.
Yeah.
Seems fun. Seems like a grind to like get all your like. There's very few people who have like all stats at max and stuff like that.
Um, I am very close to a max account. I have like
Oh, nice.
30 levels to go and all the things. I have logged in over 200 days, like game time in the game.
Jeez.
I'm proud of it.
So like
Oh
what
yeah.
that's what like over
like thousands of hours.
Yeah, it's like over well over like 2,400 hours. Like probably no, I guess closer to 5,000 hours.
Yeah, no, it's around 5,000
A
hours.
lot.
Yeah. Well, now that we're on the topic of video games, before we start recording, James, you mentioned that you were playing games earlier. I'm curious, what were you playing?
Yeah, so I don't have like a ton of time for video games.
Hmm.
Between I work full time outside of the studio, and then do studio when I'm not working full time. So I'm very much a as much bang for my buck as possible kind of gamer.
Yeah.
And I'm also very much like a lone wolf kind of gamer. I don't really do like collaborative games. So I'm big on RPGs. So I play a lot of like JRPGs, CRPGs, stuff like that. So I'm currently playing for the first time Disco Elysium, which has
Fuck
been
yeah. Such a
it's
good game.
it's so good so far. It's like I have not, spoiled myself at all.
Okay.
All I really knew about the game going in is that it's just a crime drama RPG that's extremely existential, and so far it's been that. I'm trying not to save scum as much as I can to just kind of get an authentic experience. And I also love D&D and like
Yeah.
actively play D&D. So like this game is hitting like all the spots for me. It's beautiful. The narrative is so good.
Yeah.
Graphics are really good. The level of like world building and detail in the game. I don't think I've seen a game this dense before where I'm just like I am just getting I think I made like the unfortunate mishap of putting a lot into like encyclopedia, and I'm just getting like too much information about everything that's going on, and it is just sucking my life. Just nothing but Disco Elysium right now.
The thing about Disco Elysium though versus like something like I don't know Baldur's Gate, is
Yeah,
you can't really make a wrong choice in terms of how you build your character. That's why I say you should play it multiple times because however you put your stats in, you're just gonna experience the game differently. That's all that
yeah.
really does, like in terms of the narrative. Um, I won't spoil anything for you. It's one of my favorite games. The one thing I will tell you is you can join, like not just like identify as a communist, you can join a communist party later on, like go to a secret meeting.
Oh
Do
yeah.
that. Make sure you do
Yeah, though I've been
that.
kind of just like winging it a little bit.
Yeah.
The other thing I love is that every stat has like a give and take,
Mhm.
regardless of how good you are at it. Like if you're too good at something, it can be bad, which
Yeah.
is really interesting. Like, oh, encyclopedia is great because you can like learn a bunch of facts about the world and like know more about the people and the environment, but like you're also going to get information overload and like have random thoughts pop into your head and like absolutely nonsensical facts come into conversations, and like people don't care about that. So the give and take on it is just like so interesting. But yeah, I love the just all of the inner dialogues that are
Mhm.
happening, especially with like the more like physical body functions where electrochemistry is constantly just trying to make you like do
Yeah.
drugs and drink. It's really funny.
And the game does like an unreliable narrator so well. Like sometimes you don't really know if you're like, functional. You don't know what your brain's doing at the time.
Yeah, especially
Yeah.
at the beginning of the game where you
Uh-huh.
like straight up have amnesia. You don't know what's going on. You don't know anything about yourself. You don't even know your own name.
Yeah.
I only just got rid of the expression. So that was a fun endeavor to try to
Yeah.
like get myself more presentable so I can actually try to figure out what's going on.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's super cool, but this is actually a little bit of like an offshoot for me. I'm much more typically playing JRPGs.
Okay.
I'm a huge Kingdom Hearts nerd. I love Kingdom Hearts. Um, Fuck Disney, but like it's like the one thing where it's like that's like the game that got me into everything, and I'm just like
Mhm.
absolutely obsessed with Kingdom Hearts. I frequently play Kingdom Hearts 2 all the time. I play Kingdom Hearts 2 randomizer a lot. Um, I played Final Fantasy Rebirth and Remake. I love like the I don't even know how you pronounce it. YS, that series.
Not familiar
Um,
with that one, no.
it's cool. It's like
No.
hack and slashy, like great soundtrack, like ripping guitar solos constantly. Um, yeah, and like Xenoblade Chronicles, stuff like that. Like I love just like if I'm gonna spend, $60 on a game, like I'm gonna get 80 plus hours out of it, or I better, because it's like I need it. And that's why Disco Elysium was great, because I'm like, I don't even know how many hours I'm in now. I think like 20 or 30 hours in
Yeah.
so far. And I mean, I got it before it went on turbo sale, but I only spent like $20 on it, and it's just
Mhm.
so dense. And like, I love that. I don't want to play $60 and get a 5 hour COD campaign. Like, it's not my jam.
No, I played Call of Duty 4 as a kid, but I have not played Call of Duty since. It's just not my thing.
Yeah,
Um,
I think I stopped at like Modern Warfare. I might have played Modern
Isn't
Warfare too.
isn't it like literally funded by like the U.S. military to
it's
make
Yes.
it's pretty much
propaganda?
propaganda.
Yes. I think that's like more of like a newer thing. I know the older Call of Duty games were more just like historical war games, like 1, 2, 3 are all like, World War I, World War II. But like now it's very much like, yeah, this is just like straight up modern military
Oh, the
propaganda.
communists.
Yeah.
Uh, you
On
mentioned
Halo.
yeah, Halo's amazing. You mentioned
Yeah, Halo's
Rebirth
great.
and Remake. I loved Final Fantasy VII Rebirth. I have not been able to play the new remake just because I don't have a PS5. I only play on PC, so I'm waiting for a port for that, but I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it's really good. It takes everything that Remake did and just like turns it up to like 100, and just gives you this like nice big semi-open world that's just like super dense, and the combat's great. It's pretty much like the same foundation that the first
Mm,
one gave you, but just like, let's just give you the whole world now, essentially. And it's super good. There's some writing is like, I don't know, like, it was fun. I enjoyed it. It's very
mm,
much like they're trying to appeal to younger audiences and get people into it, and very much not kind of going the same route as the OG Final Fantasy VII in a lot
mm.
of ways that I know pissed off a lot of the community. But I thought it was fun. I was just
Yeah.
there for the ride, and it's a roller coaster.
Yeah. Well,
Garbage Tycoon.
uh, well, let's get off topic again for a little bit. Just bring it back and just last thing I have for you to kind of close this out on is why why is making a space specifically for trans and queer people in music, especially heavy music, so important?
Um, that is a question that when we were first starting to take this more seriously, I felt like I had to ask a lot. I was like, what are we doing and why?
Mhm.
Like why like the world is the way it is. Does this make an impact to be running another recording studio, or is this like a self-indulgent like thing? Is this something the world needs? I feel like that's something that stopped me from pursuing this earlier in life. And I think we really had to just be put in the situation where we started doing it and seeing the why, to really get it. Um, to be working with trans artists and have them be like, "Thank you, that was the most like comfortable that I've been, working with anybody on recording." Or like that was the best experience I've had working with another engineer by far, and it's not because like I'm the best, like technically at this. Although I'm pretty good. No, I mean it's mostly just that having that connection. Um, and the reason that music is important is that like I mean I think anybody can point to music that's changed their lives, and
Absolutely.
on a greater scale, when it's a bunch of people's lives who are being changed, that is a cultural shift. Um, and I believe that a lot of the processes in the music industry as it stands kind of act as gatekeeping. That the recording process is expensive. It keeps out um, artists without money,
Mhm.
and it keeps out artists who aren't able to get the backing of a record label.
Yeah.
Record labels are big capitalist organizations. They're going to only throw money at something that to some degree fits their own agenda.
Of course.
Maybe sometimes that agenda is tokenization or trying to look counterculture or punk. But is it really giving a voice to those artists who have really really been marginalized, or is it giving a voice to artists who are the rich kids, the ones with resources, the ones who are palatable to a wider audience? Um, and so we want to help overcome that. Um, and that's why we're doing things like the Trans Musician Fund, is so that artists can afford studio professional quality recordings and mixes and masters, without having to spend quite as much money and without having to have work with a record label, so that the most marginalized, the most fucked over people, the poorest, the people who are disabled can work with us and share their experiences, because they will have the stories and the music that needs to be heard the most.
Yeah.
And that's why we want to be doing this.
Fuck yeah.
And we are, I think we're both in agreement that we just want to be making enough money off of it to continue to do it, either do it full time or continue doing it full time, to pay bills, keep a space. Um, I worked a programming job before I did this. I was very blessed to be able to go to college, to not have student loans, to have a well-paying job, to save money at it. Um, but my life felt like a dead end because I was putting my time into something that I had no say in, and I kind of directly opposed. I was in automotive, working on gas-powered vehicles for rich people,
Yeah.
and I was just like, what am I doing with my life? I'm making money, but I'm not happy, and so I wanted. We've both been privileged in many ways, even as a trans person, I've been privileged in certain ways, and I want to use that combination of marginalization and privilege to do something for the community.
Amazing.
So yeah, and like as we were saying, like we're not trying to like hide our secrets either. I mean, I think a lot of the techniques we've developed, we find through online resources or through just our own experience. But we're trying to share that with others. Streaming. I'm actually very slowly, because it is a side project. But since so many people remotely go to us for mixing and mastering, and might have questions about recording, or like they'll send me things and I'll be like, oh, I wish they'd done this or that. And so I'm starting to work on like a DIY recording handbook,
Amazing.
in which a lot of recording and mixing books. So you got to get this gear. If you don't get this particular gear, you're a fucking loser and you're never gonna sound good. Um, and I want to, one, have different tiers based on how much money, based on someone's budget. Two, to actively encourage DIY, like low cost, no cost solutions, even if they aren't like the ideal, even if they're not what we would have here, and be like, oh, you can't afford this type of soundproofing. You get literally anything that's soft in your house, blankets, pillows, whatever.
Yeah.
And yeah, just trying to make all of that more accessible.
I think that is a big hurdle for some people to even pick up music, is that they see, oh, well, there is this expense to start. I can't start, like I can't have what's considered, quality gear right now. So what's the
Yeah.
point?
Yeah, I think a lot of people are told that like you can't get into something unless you do this upfront investment. And there's some pieces of gear where it'd be like, oh yes, stay away from that. And that's one thing I wanted to get into too with that is that I wanted to get the experiences of people who have used different pieces of gear. To be like, yeah, stay away from that. That's a piece of shit. It's gonna break. You're gonna spend more money than you would have otherwise. Um, and really focus on like making it feel less intimidating and more accessible um yeah, just making it feel more accessible instead of less accessible.
Yeah. And the one silver lining about the, advance of the music industry and technology as a whole is that the bar for getting into audio engineering, mixing, mastering, everything having to do with music, the bar has never been lower. You really can get in with very, very little financial strain as long as you already have a computer. You can realistically, if you buy used, if DIY your acoustic treatment, if you even want to go that far, um, there's so much free software online. Um, we totally, absolutely never advocate for illegally downloading things
That's
or
bad.
torrenting things. It's absolutely terrible. You should never do that ever.
But
You
there's
should,
a lot of places you
but
could
there
do
are
that.
there are a lot of places where you could do that. We would absolutely never advocate for that. But if you do go that route, a lot of it's
Yeah.
free.
It'd be free if you did that horrible thing.
Yeah, it'd be free. And like, yeah, realistically, like, like I don't want to put a firm number on anything, but if you've got a computer, if you can use those things that we absolutely don't advocate for, and you've got a room in your house, realistically, you can get something pretty damn decent going for like $500 or less. Like
Mhm.
it's really not too horrible. And if you really want to scavenge, I can imagine getting something going probably for less than three. You can get a basic used interface, a basic set of monitors used, headphones used, a few cables, a cheap desk.
You can steal in real life too.
That's also
You
true, which
can.
we would never advocate for, but it
Mhm.
is
I'd probably
something you
advocate
could.
for that less, just because I don't want anyone to get hurt or go to jail. But you could do it if you're really like good at that sort of thing.
Yeah, and if you're willing to spend the time, like I mean, even like a lot of thrift stores don't know what they have when they're getting this kind of thing. Like they don't like the typical thrift store worker doesn't know what an interface is or anything, so they're gonna slap like a $20 sticker on an interface that would cost you $120 brand new. Like if you can find it, you can probably get started for basically no money.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's true of anything, but there is that stigma of like, oh, I need the good preamps, I need the best mics, and I need all this acoustic treatment to make everything sound good. So I need to buy panels from like this company that makes them super treated. And it's like, no, there's probably a manufacturer that makes the
Hmm.
material. It's literally just like insulation. Just buy some insulation, wrap it
Mhm.
in fabric, and you're done. Like you can buy all the raw materials to make all this stuff. Does it take more time? Yeah, but it's a hell of a lot less money.
Yeah, yeah, and it's like there's a reason we have this stuff. It does make it better. But good music is good music. Um,
Like Have a Nice Life, their first record was recorded like in a dorm room on like on in like GarageBand. Like you can do it. Like Weird Al recorded his first few records in a Berkeley bathroom.
Yeah.
Like you don't necessarily
I didn't know
have to
that.
have the perfect setup.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Like you don't have to have the perfect setup. You don't have to have amazing gear to make amazing records. It really comes down to, yes, a little bit of natural talent, a little bit of education, a little bit of effort and time and focus, but like you can do it. There's nothing stopping you from doing it.
The other thing about that is, we were bad at recording and bad at being
Oh,
musicians for a
so
long
bad.
time.
So bad.
So we have a lot of experience
Yeah,
making things that were not recorded or performed in the ideal way sound pretty good. Because that was us.
Everybody starts
I
somewhere.
I want to throw my hat into the ring here too, because if I have no coordination. I'm not recording a solo Blackstone project. It's just not gonna happen. But I can talk about it. And for people who want to start like a media project, you also don't need the most expensive things. Uh, now I have become more professional, but I just started with nothing. Don't watch those old videos. They're bad. Please don't watch them. Please, please, please don't watch my old videos. But you can start it. Just start with nothing, and you can do it.
Yeah, as
Yeah.
long as you have the drive to start, you can
Yeah.
figure it out later. Like if you have the drive to start and you get started and you love it and you want to invest more later, go for it. But you don't need to like save up 5 grand and then drop it all on a bunch of music gear off the rip. You can
Mm.
start with basically nothing and build your way up. Everybody does everything different. I'm not saying you shouldn't save up 5 grand and drop it on a bunch of gear if that's what you want to do. You just don't have to. It's not a
Yeah.
requirement.
I mean, what I'll say is that like the rich people who are like, yeah, I'm gonna get into this, drop like 100K on like music gear. It's like, how are you? You're not even gonna know what to do with that. Like, have you pushed your existing gear to its limit? And do you know why you need this? I think there's something to be said for that. Of using the resources you have, figuring them out really well, and then figuring out why you would want a better thing, and then getting that better thing and being and actually understanding it instead of uh, kind of just um, getting a bunch of advanced complex gear and like fucking with it.
Yeah, I mean, what's the point of buying, these super complicated pedals if you don't even know how to use a simple distortion pedal? Like it's just like, yeah, like what are you doing with that?
Yeah. Why are you gonna buy a $3,000 Martin D28 acoustic if you don't know how to play guitar in the first place? Like, just buy a cheap acoustic and learn because it's not gonna make that big of a difference except for
Also,
like
yeah,
playability, you know. But like once your tools have reached the limit of your skill, that's when you upgrade your tools.
we've gotten
Mhm.
so off topic, but guitars are like the last thing I would spend a lot of money on. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, I don't want like $100 guitar, but
We don't need like a
like five,
five thousand
yeah,
dollar custom shop Strat. Like,
above like 500 to 1,000. Like, sure, it will be better, but what are you really getting? What you? It's just like it's just for rich people.
yeah, unless it's like super specialty.
All the good guitarists, I mean, not every good guitarist, because there's kind of like the tier of guitarists who are fucking sponsored and actually rich and um like have just guitars given to them. But most of the touring musicians I know like play like $200 to $500 guitars. They're not taking their expensive guitar on the roads, and they also don't have any money because they're touring musicians.
Yeah.
Even
They're
some of
just
the
good at guitar.
even some of the big ones use like cheaper gear, like Jay Mascis of Dinosaur Jr. His signature guitar is a Squire. It's not Fender. Like it's not the cheapest guitar on the planet, but I think it caps at like 490, like at its worst. Like, and that's Dinosaur Jr. Like,
Yeah.
It's so funny how people will pay tons of money for the relict like models of so and so's guitar, and it's why do you think their guitar was like that?
yeah,
Because they played it for years and years at hundreds and hundreds of shows instead of replacing it.
Yeah.
I've played the same Jazz Master for 4 or 5 years in Dreamwall now. I've played on every tour. It's got some dents. I like threw it at my amp the other night.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
I think the neck's starting to warp, which is probably kind of bad. But I'm still playing it because
Mhm.
I like it and I don't want to buy another guitar.
mhm.
Fuck yeah. Don't buy new stuff until you have to.
Fuck gear. No, just kidding.
Fuck
Gear's
gear.
cool.
Yeah.
We have a lot of
Gear's
gear
gear's
here.
cool. We love gear. We just
Yeah.
like don't do more than you need to.
Yeah.
All right. So that's We got, yeah, that was an extremely
That's our
long answer to
soapbox.
like why, yeah, or the soapbox on top of a soapbox on top
I
of the
will.
answer to why is this important?
I
We have
love it.
ADHD.
We both are actually diagnosed ADHD,
Yeah.
so sorry.
I haven't taken my Adderall in a week. My life's falling apart. It's great.
Well, Aki, James, thank you so much for joining me. Like send me those links after we stop recording, so I
Oh
will
yeah,
put them in the
definitely.
video description. The great conversation. For everyone watching at home, go check out New House Studios. Check out the new compilation coming out. Consider donating to the fund. As always, thank you to my patrons. You help pay the bills for running the show. Um, Keep it metal. My name is Maddie, aka Beavermosh, and I'm signing off.